All right, what's up, everyone? Welcome back. And if you're here, then you know it's started. It's already started. The new beginning has started. Now, if you asked me if you even asked me a year ago, what were we at a year ago? A year ago, we were probably like, we might have been like 2-6 because Tua was still out, and then we started to come back. Right? We wanted to. I think we got to 500 for the first time at like 7-7, and then we went to 7-8. Maybe we were at 8-8, and then we lost 8-9. But we were probably in the same place. But even then, we were only in year three of McDaniel. He had gone to the playoffs his first 2 years. I would have said, "There's no way we're gonna blow this up. It's just an unfortunate circumstances because of Tua's injury. We're gonna rebound next year, and it's gonna be fine." And now we're sitting here at 2-7. Mathematically, yeah, you're still in it. You would have to win out. You would have to go 10-7 and probably need some help to get that last wild card spot. But you're not going to go 2-7. And even if you were to go 7-9, would that earn Mike McDaniel his job to continue for the next year? I don't know. That's up to the GM, but it's started. The new beginning has started. And I think at this point, for someone who was a Chris Greer advocate, I stuck up for the guy over the years. I said, listen, it's not as bad as you think. Yes, statistically, he hasn't won a playoff game, but he's done some cool things, getting draft picks, getting certain players that are playmakers. Like, I thought he put us in a good position over the last 3 years to make a run. And you could argue that. But when you look at what the job is, a GM shouldn't really get more than 6 years. He's been in the organization for 25 years. He's been the GM for over 10 years. If you don't win a playoff game in 6 years, you should lose your job because your job is to win a playoff game. And that goes for all 32 teams. I really believe that. All 32 organizations should win a playoff game every 6 years. The league is built for that to happen. So there's really no excuse. Now, to win a Super Bowl every 6 years, that's crazy. But every team should experience a playoff win every 4 to 6 years. There's no reason you shouldn't. The league is built so that you can have a team that is able to win a playoff game. They give you opportunities through the draft, through free agency. There's a cap. Players leave teams all the time. You just have to do a good job. Therefore, if you do not win a playoff game in 4 to 6 years, people should be terminated. That is your job. So it's unfortunate, and maybe he was a good guy and people liked him, but 10 years in, we didn't win a playoff game, and it might have not always been his fault. It could have been unluck, with the quarterback you drafted, but that falls on your hands with Tannehill, with Tua, with a lot of these linemen that haven't hit. And the ones that have hit, you didn't keep them. You didn't re-sign Robert Hunt. You didn't re-sign our Van Ginkel, our outside linebacker. There's a lot of players that we let walk that were kind of homegrown that we kind of missed out on too. So, look, he's gone. I don't know who's going to replace him. I don't know anything about the GM game. Obviously, there's speculation in the Reddit forums, based off of Twitter. I've said something. I don't know anything, and I don't think a lot of you guys do either. I think this is something that doesn't get really studied or talked about because we're not seeing, oh, it's a coach. If it's a coach, you're learning about the coach in the college rankings or around the league. You hear about the coordinators that are great, but you don't know about GMs really. Maybe there's assistant GMs that work with organizations that are doing well, and then you're like, okay, let's grab a guy from that organization because they seem to do it right. So if you were going to grab a guy from the Phillies organization, that would be kind of exciting. If you're going to grab a guy from the Rams organization, that would be kind of exciting because it seems like they've drafted well. So you look around the league and you're like, what teams have drafted well? And then you're like, who works with that GM or who's associated with that GM? Would they be a good GM? I don't know. The only other guy I do know is Louis Riddick. We've heard his name thrown around. He's on ESPN. He's on all these sports shows. He's very knowledgeable. He's talked about the Dolphins a lot. He's talked about the organization a lot and how they've built the team. And I don't know if he's just a personality, but that's something to get excited about. And I would be excited if he had an opportunity or he interviewed. But again, I don't know. I don't know if he's good or would be good. I saw some people say, well, If he was good, he would have had a job already. And that's not necessary. That's not necessarily true. I mean, look, Mike McDaniel, you could have said if he was good, he would have had a job already. Well, he came and he got a job and he did a good job for the most part. And if he doesn't survive this rebuild, I do truly believe he'll get another chance as a head coach, but maybe not right away. But he definitely will be one of the best coordinators, and then another opportunity will rise again, like Brian Flores. I think Brian Flores will be a coach again too, because he does a really good job in Minnesota. So Chris Greer is out, and now we have an interim GM. So now you thought everybody was going to get moved around. We are going to make some trades to build capital. The first one, Jalen Phillips. How do we feel about Jalen Phillips? I loved him. Was always cheering for him. Outside of 2 injuries, kind of messed up the momentum he had in those 2 seasons. And now this year, it seems like he's taken a step back. We picked up his 5th-year option. Look, based off of what we've seen, we weren't going to re-sign him. We were going to let him go to free agency. He was going to go. So we got a free 3rd-round pick. That's how I look at it. We got a free 3rd-round pick. You're 2-7. You just traded Jalen Phillips for a 3rd-round pick. You weren't going to re-sign him. He was on the last year of his contract. That's one of the first good moves we made. I was hoping Bradley Chubb would go. Not that I don't think he's good, but I'm saying he's at the point where, what is he, 30, 31? He should be on a contender. He's on the latter years of his career. Why would we keep him? Are we going to rebuild with him? Probably not. Does he get traded in the offseason? I hope, maybe before the draft. I don't know. But I thought that somebody would have called for him, maybe like the 49ers. Seems like it would have been a perfect fit. It didn't happen. So I don't know what that means. The only other players people speculated was Jalen Waddle and Devon Achane. I think that's crazy. They're so young. Why would we not continue with them and build with them and hope that they can be the core pieces of what we are, moving forward? We got Patrick Paul. We got a left tackle. We got Achane. We got Gordon. We got Waddle. That's like a good little offensive core to rebuild with if you draft a quarterback or you don't. And now some of you might be like, well, we needed more picks to move up. I'm not high on this draft. It doesn't seem like a lot of people are. I also don't think we're going to get a top 5 pick necessarily. I think the Jets are obviously, they're gone. They're going to be worse than us. They traded away 3 of their best players. You have the Saints. You have the Raiders. You have the Titans. Washington now could end up being really bad. They lost their quarterback. The Giants. So, there's a lot of teams that might be ahead of us to where this isn't necessarily the best draft to have a high pick. And we're not going to have a high pick. Unless there's like 5 quarterbacks coming out and they seem like there's a lot of hype, then, maybe we draft one with the 5th overall pick. And he sits behind Tua for a year. And I think that's the route we go is you have a guy. I would think this, all right? If well, before we get to that, I want to go back on the Jalen Phillips trade and why no one else. That was a little shocking. And maybe that's what I'm talking about now is like maybe they don't think that this is the year we're going to draft a quarterback. Next year is kind of like a rebuild year because we're stuck with Tua. So maybe we're going to look to maybe build capital and move up in the next year's draft in 2027. But I think the Jalen Phillips move allows Chop Robinson to get more snaps and let us know what we have with him. Let's find out. Let's find out. Is he the guy? Because one thing we do need, you need a quarterback, but we need a defensive end that's as good as Myles Garrett or any of these other guys, or Hutchinson or J.J. Watt or Bosa brothers, like any of these type of caliber guys. We need one of those. We need another Jason Taylor. We have Jordan Brooks. I think we build around Jordan Brooks. I think we build our defensive line around, look, you have to. You have Sealer. You have Grant. You hope he improves. You have Chop Robinson. There's some good core pieces that with a great coach and a better GM, maybe something can pop. I don't know. Like, look, when there's a rebuild, there's teams like Washington last year. They went to the NFC Championship in year 1 of the rebuild. So it's not impossible. But Do we draft a guy and he sits behind Tua? That seems like the best idea. If you did draft a guy, you're stuck with Tua. Let's kind of sit with him. You know what I mean? Let's do one of those where he learns. And I think that's the only way McDaniel survives this, right? If Mike McDaniel hypothetically was to survive this season and the new GM came in and he's like, I like Mike McDaniel. I want to give him a fresh start with his plan of who he wants to draft as a quarterback and more control over his players. And let's see what happens. Then I would think they would stick with Tua, draft a guy that Mike McDaniel wanted, and he would teach that guy for a year, and then they would move on from the Tua contract. That seems like a realistic thing. Now, does McDaniel even survive this season? I think it depends, right? I think I think the first thing that you have to look for as a Dolphin fan is the Buffalo game coming up. We've had a little over over a week to prepare for the Bills game. We always do play the Bills pretty tough. Now, if they show up and they play the Bills tough and almost beat them, then that lets us know that the locker room still fights for Mike McDaniel. And I know I said this weeks ago, but that is the case. Now, we have evidence that everyone in the locker room is going to know that, oh, the season's over. We've traded a player away. We fired the GM. Everyone psychologically in the locker room is sitting there going, it's done. We're over. Our season's over. We can check out. You have officially had permission to check out, and now maybe we're going to see what young players want to make the team and become starters in the future, kind of like Nick Needham did a few years ago, or Kader Kodu. Practice squad guys that end up playing so hard that they're good enough to make the team when everyone else is checked out. That's what we're going to find out. In this Buffalo game, do we lose 35-14? Then you would expect that, okay, they're done. Mike McDaniel can't get any of these guys to play hard. And I don't think he would get fired after the Bills game. I think it would happen after the Spain game when we go to Washington. Now, Washington's in a situation where they have Mariota. Are they going to play tough? They're 3-6, I think, or 3-5. They're in a desperate situation. That could be a game we could win. It's not far-fetched to think that we could win that game. Now, if you win that game, then you're like, Mike McDaniel, he's getting some wins out of these guys. Now he saved his job. And then the next game you have the Saints. And then after that you have the Jets. There's a situation where, regardless of the Buffalo game, Mike McDaniel could get 3 wins in a row. And you're sitting there at 5-8 going into the Steelers game. So then you're like, well, not bad for what a disaster of a season. He got them to 5-8. And then there's 4 games left. If he somehow got 2 more wins and you went 7-10, you would be like, we went 7-10, and you're telling me that we are 3 wins away from the playoffs, and 3 of those losses were a block punt, personal foul, Achane stepping out of bounds, the Panthers comeback win, the Chargers game. You know what I mean? Like there's so many games that you could be like, wow, it's a game of inches for real. If he got to 7-10, you could argue that he deserves to get a full fresh season with a new GM. But if they don't look like they're playing for him and they lose against the Bills and they lose against Washington, then I could see them firing the coach after Washington for sure. And then you're in a situation now, what do you do as a fan? What do you root for? Well, you have the Saints and Jets. I think you got to root for a loss because you want to help your draft capital. Even if your draft capital is trading back to get more first-round picks the following year to potentially get one of the best quarterbacks of the next generation. So here's how I can create delusion. We talked about delusion in previous recaps. How do we create delusion to be excited about the Dolphins? The delusion to make the playoffs thing is gone now. So we can't do that anymore. We're not going to win out. It's just not going to happen. Players are checked out. And to it, he's regressed. Now, if we were to lose to the Bills, and then we lost to Washington and Mike McDaniel is fired after that, that is when he would be fired. Because then they would hand it over to Anthony Weaver to see what he does in the final 7 games, right? So Anthony Weaver gets 7 games to audition himself as a head coach and potentially stay in the building. But I think we all would want something new, a whole fresh start, and a new GM would probably want that as well. assuming they don't hire a new GM until after the season. Okay. But if Mike McDaniel was fired, there's two things that could happen. Anthony Weaver could come in and then do 3 wins in a row, and then you're like, wait, is he kind of a good coach? The Bengals, he could win 4 or 5. He could go 4-2, and he could maybe win his job. I don't know. But if Mike McDaniel's fired, you play the Saints and Jets. I think as a fan, you have to root for them to beat us, because then that levels them up above us of the tiebreaker. Because then the Saints would have a second win, the Jets would have a second win, and then the tiebreaker with us and the Jets would be about percentages in games played that are similar, and then the Saints would have the tiebreaker over us because they beat us. So then potentially we're sitting in the top 3 picks or the top 2. You would have to root for that. You have to be delusional. And then I look at it, it's like, is there a sure thing quarterback coming out that you would draft, or would you move back in the draft to get extra first round picks? Hear me out, for the following season, so that you have 2 or 3, so that you could go after Arch Manning. And I know some people are going to be like, Arch Manning sucks. He's not good. Give him another year, man. The Mannings always play 4 years in college. Okay? He was a redshirted guy. He's a sophomore this year. Or a junior. He's not going out this year. He is not coming out of the draft. He's going to play next year. You see what 1 year does to a quarterback. Look what it did for Joe Burrow. Look what it did for Jaden Daniels. It changes people. They grow, they mature, they get better at watching film, they get better. They just become a better quarterback. You can't tell me you wouldn't be excited if all of a sudden next year Texas is in the national championship and Arch Manning is a Heisman candidate. And all of a sudden you're going into the 2027 draft, and you have 3 first round picks and a bunch of second round picks, and you have the capital to move up. And if you want a Manning name in Miami, if there's any name that could change the history of this franchise, it's a Manning. So, something to think about in the Saints and Jets upcoming games if we don't win. Now, if we win against the Bills and if you win against Washington, it's like, okay, it doesn't seem like you would lose both those games. And now we're talking about like a bottom, 5, 6, 7th pick overall in the draft, not a top pick, to where maybe you keep that and you grab the best defensive end or lineman. You get another lineman to build for your future. So then you have 2 tackles that are amazing. So I think that's something to look for. I don't know how to cheer as a fan. I say we enjoy the Buffalo game. We always like to, let's try to knock Buffalo out. Why not? Why not? If we lose, we lose. Then for the Washington game, you're like, well, if we lose this, McDaniel's gone. That's what I think. So if he's fired, it's after Spain. It's not any time before that. If we lose both those games, we start rooting against the Dolphins and we bet on them. We bet on them to lose because why not? Why not? That's the only way you can enjoy this. As a fan, the only thing you can enjoy now going forward is let's get Waddle over 1,000 yards receiving. Let's get Achane over 1,000 yards rushing. Let's hope that Chop Robinson maybe develops and gets maybe a handful of sacks before the end of the year. Can he get to 8? I don't know. That would be great. Maybe one of these young secondary guys comes out, gets a couple picks. He turns out to be a stud. Certain players you want to see pop up when all the other guys have quit. Let's see if we can get a young star to rise up. That's what you have to root for. And then you have to root for losses to build our draft capital. But like now, I think as a fan, you also have to start watching college and figure out who are the people they're going to draft. Who are the people they're going to draft? And I don't know how I feel about McDaniel. I love him. I do like him. And I think, man, what if he was like on the Bengals right now? What if Mike McDaniel was the coach of the Bengals? Yeah, that defense is horrible, but imagine him. Like, let's say Zach Taylor gets fired, right? And that's a very big possibility. And then they clean house, and then they bring a defensive coordinator. They change the defense up. But imagine if Mike McDaniel had Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Chase Brown. Imagine if he had that offense. You wouldn't be curious to see that? Think about that. Imagine him with Dallas. I mean, they're not going to fire their coach that he's in his first year. But like imagine him with some of these other offenses. If you saw what he made Tua look like, imagine what Mike McDaniel could look like with some of these other offenses. That's all I'm saying. Okay? Like what about not the Texans, but like imagine if he took the head coaching job in Tennessee and he had a young quarterback. Who knows? He could end up there. What if he went to, you know, I don't see anywhere else that would fire a guy. The Saints is a first year coach. So, I mean, maybe he just goes back as a coordinator to one of these teams. Think about that. Not even a head coaching job. I mean, the 49ers, he doesn't go there, although that's where he came from. But, like, imagine if he goes to a team. Look, I mean, he could even go to Arizona if they fired that coach. But they won, and now they have Brissett playing well. It's so annoying to see ex-backup Dolphin quarterbacks play well for other teams. So who knows? Imagine, what if Mike McDaniel went to Buffalo because we hired Joe Brady as our head coach? That would be a nightmare. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know what to root for, but like that's how I see it. I see we'll know more in a couple weeks. If they play tough against Buffalo, then they're still there for Mike McDaniel, and then he has a chance to save his job if he beats Washington. But if he loses against Washington, regardless of beating Buffalo, if he loses against Washington, the firing is going to happen. They're going to give Weaver a chance to see what he can do, but then you're kind of cheering against Weaver. You want the Saints and Jets to beat us because those are going to be the two teams ahead of us in the draft. So that's where we're at. It's an unfortunate season, and this will be the hardest season to do recaps for a while, hopefully for at least 3-4 years, right? Because we do this every 4 years. The first 2 years we get a little excited. The third year something happens, and then the fourth year the coach gets fired. We've never had a coach make it more than 4 years. Jimmy Johnson completed his 4 years but then retired, and then before that every coach gets fired in year 4. We've never made it after year 4 with a coach since Don Shula. So that's unfortunate. Thanks for watching, guys. Make sure you like and subscribe, and we will see you next week.